Hi, in this tutorial, we're going to be covering solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So in this tutorial, you'll learn how to complete the square of a binomial and how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So completing the square is if x squared plus bx is a binomial, then by adding b over 2 squared, the square of half the coefficient of x, you will obtain a perfect square trinomial. So here, if we have x squared plus bx, if we add b over 2 squared, then we'll get a perfect square trinomial of x plus b over 2 squared. So let's do an example. Let's complete the square of x squared plus 10x. So now we're going to add 10 over 2 squared, which is this 10 over 2 squared, which gives us x squared plus 10x plus 10 divided by 2 is 5 squared. So now we get x squared plus 10x plus 25. So that gives us the perfect square. So that gives us the perfect square of x plus 5 squared. Now here's how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. If the coefficient of x squared is not 2, divide both sides by this coefficient. Then isolate the variable terms on one side and complete the square by adding the square of half the coefficient of x to both sides. Next, factor the perfect square trinomial and solve by applying the square root property. So let's do an example. Let's solve by completing the square. 2x squared plus 12x minus 4 equals 0. So the first thing we're going to do is simplify this by dividing by 2. So this will give us x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 0. Now we'll move 2 to the other side so that we have this form, x squared plus bx equals 2. Now we're going to multiply both sides by 6 over 2 squared. We're going to add both sides by 6 over 2 squared. So now we have x squared plus 6x plus 6 divided by 2 is 3, squared is 9. So we have 2 plus 9. So now we have a perfect square of x plus 3 squared equals 11. Now if you remember, u squared equals the square root, the plus or minus square root of b. So what this means is that x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 11. So now if we move 3 to the other side, use a different color here. If we move 3 to the other side, we get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 11. So that's our answer. So in this tutorial, you learned how to complete the square of a binomial and how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. Now try and solve problems in our Solving the Quadratic Equations by Completing the Square workbook. For more help, sign up for online tutoring. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be going over the quadratic formula. Thank you.